Hello, this is Joseph with Next Gen Manual Therapeutics. And today I wanted to actually read something. It's out of Richard Selzers' book, Mortal Lessons. And it's the story essentially of his encounter with Yeshi Dhonden, then the physician for the Dalai Lama. And I think it really demonstrates our perceptual capacity, what's possible not only with perception, but also how we either can create a limitation or an expansion of our perceptual abilities based on our perspective. If we view something as I'm sitting at a wood table, if I view something as very solid, and if I view a person as something very solid that can only be interacted with via exercise or a scalpel or an X-ray or an MRI, these things are all valid, but they are not the only way to perceive something about a person, to interact with a person, to gain a tremendous amount of information about the person. In this case, I'm thinking therapeutics, so the clients or the patients in front of us. So again, it's from Richard Selzers' Mortal Lessons. And so I'll read this. It's a little bit long, but I think it's just, I'd like to see people be able to have access to the story. It's just that good. On the bulletin board in the front hall of the hospital where I work, there appeared an announcement. Yeshi Dhonden, it read, will make rounds at 6 o'clock in the morning of June 10th. The particulars were given, followed by a notation. Yeshi Dhonden is personal physician to the Dalai Lama. I am not so leathery a skeptic that I would knowingly ignore an emissary from the gods. Not only might such sang-froid be inimical to one's earthly well-being, it could take care of eternity as well. Thus, on the morning of June 10th, I joined the clutch of white coats waiting in a small conference room adjacent to the ward selected for the round. The air was heavy with ill-concealed dubiety and suspicion of bamboozlement. At precisely 6 o'clock, he materializes. A short, burly man dressed in sleeveless robe of saffron and maroon. His scalp is shaven, and the only visible hair on his scanty black line above each hooded eye. He bows in greeting while his young interpreter makes the introduction. Yeshi Dhonden, we are told, will examine a patient selected by a member of the staff. The diagnosis is unknown to Yeshi Dhonden as it is to us. The examination of the patient will take place in our presence, after which we will reconvene in a conference room where Yeshi Dhonden will discuss the case. We are further informed that for the last 2 hours, Yeshi Dhonden has purified himself by bathing, fasting, and prayer. I, having breakfast well, performed only the most desultory of ablutions, and given no thought at all as to my soul, glanced furtively over at my fellows. Suddenly, we seem a soiled, uncouth lot. The patient had been awakened early and told that she was to be examined by a foreign doctor and had been asked to produce a fresh specimen of urine. So when we enter the room, the woman shows no surprise. She has long ago taken on that mixture of compliance and resignation that is the faces of chronic illness. This was to be yet another in an endless series of tests and examination. Yeshi Dhonden steps to the bedside while the rest of us stand apart, watching. For a long time he gazes at the woman, favoring no part of her body with his eyes, but seeming to fix his glance at a place just above her supine form. I too study her, No physical sign nor obvious symptom gives a clue as to the nature of her disease. At last he takes her hand and, raising it with both of his own, now he bends over the bed in a kind of crouching stance, his head drawn down into the collar of his robe. His eyes are closed as he feels for her pulse. In a moment, he has found the spot, and for the next half hour he remains thus, suspended above the patient like some exotic golden bird with folded wings, holding the pulse of the woman beneath his fingers, cradling her in his. All the power of the man seems to have been drawn down into this one purpose. It is palpation of the pulse raised to the state of ritual. From the foot of the bed where I stand, it is as though he and the patient have entered a very special place of isolation, of apartness, about which a vacancy hovers, across which no violation is possible. After a moment, the woman rests back upon her pillow. From time to time, she raises her head to look at the strange figure above her, then sinks back once more. I cannot see their hands joined in correspondence that is exclusive, intimate, his fingertips receiving the voice of her sick body through the rhythm and throb she offers at her wrist. All at once I am envious, not of him, not of Yeshi Dhonden for his gift of beauty and holiness, but of her. I want to be held like that, touched so, received. I know that I, who have palpated 100,000 pulses, have not felt a single one. At last Yeshi Dhonden straightens, gently places the woman's hand on the bed, and steps back. The interpreter produces a small wooden bowl with 2 sticks. Yeshi Dhonden pours a portion of the urine specimen into the bowl and proceeds to whip the liquid with the 2 sticks. This he does for several minutes until a foam is raised. Then, bowing above the bowl, he inhales the odor 3 times. He sets down the bowl and turns to leave. All this while he has not uttered a single word. As he nears the door, the woman raises her head and calls out to him in a voice at once urgent and serene. "Thank you, doctor," she says, and touches with her other hand the place he had held on her wrist, as though to recapture something that had visited there. Yeshi Dhonden turns back for a moment to gaze at her, then steps into the corridor. Rounds are at an end. We are seated once more in the conference room. Yeshi Dhonden speaks now for the first time in a soft Tibetan sounds that I have never heard before. He has barely begun. He has barely begun when the young interpreter begins to translate, the 2 voices continuing in tandem, a bilingual fugue, the one chasing the other. It's like a chanting of monks. He speaks of winds coursing through the body of the woman, currents that break against the barriers, eddying. The vortices are in her blood, he says, the last spendings of the imperfect heart. Between the chambers of her heart, long before she was born, a wind had come and blown open a deep gate that must never be opened. Through it charged the full waters of her river, as the mountain stream cascades in the springtime, battering, knocking loose the land, and flooding her breath. Thus he speaks and is silent. May we now know the diagnosis, the professor asks? The host of the rounds, the man who knows, answers. Congenital heart disease, he says. Interventricular septal defect with resultant heart failure. A gateway in the heart, I think, that must not be opened. Through it charge the full waters that flood her breath. So, here is this doctor listening to the sounds of the body to which the rest of us are deaf. He is more than a doctor, he is a priest. Now and then it happens, as I make my rounds, that I hear the sound of his voice like an ancient Buddhist prayer, its meanings long since forgotten, only the music remaining. Then a jubilation possesses me and I feel myself touched by something divine.